Thank you. So, as you know, today we will be talking about the largest part of our budget, makes up about 75–80% of our budget, and it's one of the most important parts of the budget, which is our staff. So, just an agenda, we always go over the goals of the budget. We're just going to give you a reminder of where we are from our prior presentation, which is mostly just non-personnel, but we do have two propositions we do need to approve, so we'll talk about those as well. And then I will hand it over to Mrs. D'Angelo, who is our expert in personnel. She'll speak to you about what our plans are, and then give you an update on our budget calendar. So our goals for the 24-25 budget is to enhance a comprehensive education that our community has come to expect, improve the alignment of resources towards the district's strategic plan. You've heard a little bit about that today. Maintain the stabilization of reserves, maximize the use of every dollar spent, maximize the ability to generate aid in future years, and transparency. So this is a large spreadsheet, but this is a breakdown of our non-personnel in the various categories. Overall, this is the exact same. If you guys remember in the prior presentations, we have not made any decisions on what to add to the budget because we haven't given you a full scope of everything that's in consideration. So last year, our non-personnel budget was $22,754,551. And as of today, for next year's budget, it is still $22,745,551. So first up is to establish a capital reserve. In our prior discussion, we felt that it was necessary to just do a $20 million capital reserve rather. It doesn't mean that we have to fund $20 million. It just gives us an avenue to fund it. This does not have any impact on taxes. Mrs. Goodberley, do we vote now or should I wait until the other proposition first?
We'll do them together.
Okay. In addition to that, the bus purchase reserve, after considering all the resources available, as I've mentioned, we are doing a study for electric buses that is not far enough along. So today, our recommendation is to move forward with 6 large diesel buses, 1 small gasoline wheelchair bus, 1 small gasoline bus for the estimated cost of $1,375,000.
Want to talk about the legal notice as well?
So at this point,
Did you have those
yeah,
together?
so it'll be one vote for the two of them together. So at this point, what I did is I incorporated those two propositions into the legal notice.
Okay,
The legal notice, the reason that you're voting on it now is because it has to be in the newspaper 45 days before the vote. And in order to get that done, this is the meeting we have to do that. So those two propositions, the way it reads is you're voting on the propositions in the legal notice. It's because we'll do one vote, but it'll be the propositions and the legal notice, and it can go as one.
okay. So I will need a motion then to authorize the 2 bond propositions and the legal notice for the May 21st, 2024 annual vote and election.
Lisa.
Motion by Lisa, second, please.
Brian.
Brian, any comments or questions before we vote?
Thank you, Mr. Valise, on the research for this recommendation, because I know there's been a lot of discussion that this group has had about it here and in Albany.
Okay, other comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you for that. So before we go in to the personnel budget, just giving you an update. This is the reality of where we're at right now. So our current revenues, when we previously spoke, was with our current state aid, was $101 million. As we talked, we still feel very confident that we're going to be able to get all that BOCES aid that we were getting this current school year. So if we add that in, we're looking at $101 million, 544. Our non-personnel budget, as shared with you, is almost $23 million. Our rollover personnel budget is currently and that's including all fringe benefits, salaries, is just shy of $80 million, which gives us our total of expenditures right now of $102,287,959. That leaves our budget in a current deficit of $743,514. We are still going through the refining process. We're looking for efficiencies in the budget. Mrs. D'Angelo has spent a lot of time with me this week working through and tweaking the budget. So we're hoping that we can find some more efficiencies within the budget without impacting anything. We do feel very confident that we have a lot of options available to us, that we are not expecting any layoffs or cuts for next school year. We believe that we can close this gap either through additional state aid, efficiencies, use of reserves, one way or another, but we feel confident that we'll be able to close this gap and at least have our existing personnel and possibly more. As you guys have, this weekend when we met with Assemblywoman Burns, we heard more of how the state budget works, and we've seen the Senate and the Assembly's budget come out. They're looking more positive than the original one. Obviously, there's going to be some negotiation back and forth, but it does appear that there is a light at the end of the tunnel for us in the state aid. So hopefully we have some better news in future presentations. Next up is Dorothy.
Thank you.
I don't usually have to bend down for the mic. This is new for me. I'm Dorothy D'Angelo. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Personnel, and I'm happy to share the progress that we've made to date. We're certainly still in progress with the personnel budget. But I just wanted to point out before I start into the presentation that it will look a little different to you tonight than it has in years past. Over the course of the past few years, the personnel budgets have included concentrated staffing additions to address significant gaps in several vital areas, including safety and security, social emotional support for students, special education, academic intervention services, and building cleanliness. I'm happy to report that moving into the 24-25 school year, the majority of those areas are now appropriately staffed. So you'll see a narrower scope of need areas represented in the proposed personnel budget that I'm going to share with you this evening. So in terms of K-12 enrollment projections for next year, there's a projected increase of 51 students in grades K through 6, and a decrease of 27 students in grades 7 through 12. So the projected enrollment is a net increase K-12 of 24 students. There are a couple of things around enrollment that I'd like to highlight. So going into this year, the projected enrollment for kindergarten was 314 students. And as you can see, the actual enrollment is 267, which was a difference of 47 students. So they projected 47 more than we had. So we're really watching those kindergarten numbers because based on live births, the projected enrollment next year is 325. So we're looking at data from previous years, spring enrollment in kindergarten. We're in the registration phase right now. We look at pre-K numbers, how many kids have been on the wait list in the past year, because in previous years that's been a predictor. But at the end of the day, kindergarten's always a wild card, but we're going to watch that closely so that we can appropriately staff that. We did have an influx of students in the 4th grade this year, 19 students in August, into late summer. So we were 19 over the projected number in 4th grade, and we have some large grade levels moving up into 5th and 6th. So we're projecting increases in those grade levels next year. Any questions about the enrollment numbers? So as we were planning for our enrollment and the number of general ed classes that we had to have to support that, I just want to remind the board that these are the ranges of class sizes that we try to stay in at each level. So in order to address those increases in needs for staff at the intermediate school, we actually need to add 3 gen ed classrooms. And up there, you're going to see that 1.0 FTE at VIS. 2 of those positions are going to be accomplished by a reduction in first grade. So that kindergarten class that's moving up to first is much smaller than the current first grade class. So it will actually only be a net gain of 1.0 FTE that we need for gen ed to support those 3 intermediate classrooms. And then we need the requisite specials to go with that. So a 0.2 art, 0.2 music, and 0.2 PE. As we look beyond just enrollment and we're looking at other staffing requests and needs across the district, we always come back to that strategic plan. So everything that we do in the district, including budgeting for personnel, is tied to that strategic plan. And while these overlap, they're not mutually exclusive of each other in the impact that staff have. We're going to be speaking tonight when I'm talking about positions in the realm of culture. The positions that we're proposing are really around consistency and continuity of programming for students and also maximizing opportunities for students. In the learning and instruction pillar, it's really looking at those positions that impact student achievement. And under student supports and opportunities, we're really looking at those special ed and student services positions. So we have had 61 additional students that have signed up to take strings. And so in order to ensure that no one's on a wait list, we are proposing a 0.4 music teacher at VIS and VSH to support the strings program. Last year, if you'll recall, we added a work-based learning coordinator, and great news, we have students that want to do summer internships, and we would really love to support that work. So we're asking for some summer hours for our work-based learning coordinator to be able to appropriately support those students and for those students to be able to do their internships in the summer. We have a few courses in the junior high that need additional section coverage, and then the addition of 1 coach for the modified baseball team. We're continuing to expand our integrated co-teaching model. So at the intermediate school, in order to expand that model, we're proposing 4 full-time special education teachers. 3 of those teachers will be supporting the integrated co-teaching model, and one of those positions will help release one of our current special ed teachers so that she can solely concentrate on providing specialized reading to students. In order to also support that integrated co-teaching model, we're proposing 3 teaching assistants at Victor Intermediate School, 5 at the senior high, so we're extending that integrated co-taught model at the high school level. You'll see that 1.0 full-time district teaching assistant that's asterisk. That's because that is a transition of an aide position to the teaching assistant position. The other positions that I've listed at teaching assistants, those are not transitioning. Those are full positions we're supporting. And then we currently have 1 behavior analyst for the K-12 span, and there's a recommendation to add an additional behavior analyst. We really want to support all of our students on campus, and they're an incredible resource. In terms of the learning and instruction component, we're still refining, and as I mentioned, looking at what we need for personnel. So we're looking at things like math at the high school. There were conversations about adding some courses next year. So we're looking at that and just all across those instructional areas to see if there are any additional needs and to look at needs that have been brought up to really define what exactly those needs are. And I'll come back on March 28th with an update on personnel when we complete our work in that realm. So in terms of the financial cost of each of the positions. That's broken out for you on the slide. Just give you a minute to look at that. This is the remaining positions that I spoke of this evening. And just so you know, the cost includes the salary, health insurance, payroll tax, pension cost, and workers' compensation. So that isn't just what the base salary is.
Dorothy, I have a quick question. Could you go back to the slide before? So if, just to help clarify, if I were looking at like of one FTE and you look at the cost, so you're saying that 7.65% of that total is the payroll tax part of it? Is that,
Mr. Valise?
if you, so like the pension cost is 12%. So if I looked at the behavior analyst, for example, of that 93,000, 12% of that 93,000 is their pension cost, and 3% of that 93,000 is workers' comp cost.
Kind of, sort of. It wouldn't quite work
I don't mean
that
to
way
complicate it.
because like health insurance, we're not going to pay pension costs on top of that and workers' comp. So we use a rough estimate of our salary, and then with our salaries, we just look at the average salary, and then I add on the payroll tax based off the base salary, pension costs, workers' comp, and then we kind of get a blended average of what the health insurance plan is because we don't know if this person's going to take a single, family, et cetera. So those percentages are on their salary only, so it wouldn't be on all the other costs.
Okay, all right. And this is just another general question. For retirees, we would assume that those are hires to replace the retirees. So the positions that you're looking at that are in addition to our current staffing. Am I right?
Yes, we have intentions of replacing every retiree position.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is a summary of the cost based on each area that I spoke of this evening, and then the total dollar amount for the positions that I've outlined this evening as well. That total does not include the transition position for the teaching assistant, the work-based learning summer support, the section coverage, and the coach. Any questions?
I have a question. The behavior analyst, is that a school psych position or admin? Can you just speak?
It's not an administrative position.
Okay.
They typically have a psychologist background, or Karen, help me out. What other background can people have for a behavior analyst? You guys are asking really hard questions tonight. It's a good thing I have my friends with me.
So our behavior analysts can, there are BCBAs, and they can stand alone, or many can be a school psychologist with that credential. So either one would serve in that role.
And if there's two, so if we already have one and then there's the proposal to add one FTE, would they be split like elementary, secondary, or not necessarily? It's just based on district need?
I think we would look at an elementary, secondary split, but then also the needs of the student would drive that. And so, but what we're finding right now with just one, we're not able to meet the needs K-12.
Okay, thank you.
Is just for the general population, is behavior analyst a rebranding of behavior specialist, or is it nuanced different?
Rebranding, it's the same.
Okay. And then one very blunt question is, you put in all this work to recommend these positions to fulfill what district leadership identifies as the needs of our students and our staff. There's still time in between. Is this enough? Or is it, well, this gets us to where we think we can make it work for the year? Are you asking us for enough is what I'm saying? Because if you're not, please do.
Thank you for sharing that sentiment. We're working through the process to ask for what we need, and we're still going through that process to determine what's needed. Any other questions? I mean, Karen Finter's looking really lonely back there, so she's the only friend I didn't call up yet. Thank you, and thank you for your support in previous years. It felt really, really different this year, going through the personnel process, and a real sense of accomplishment on behalf of all of us, that you supported all of our work the past few years. We really feel it, and the kids are really benefiting, as you can hear from the presentations tonight.
Great to hear. Thanks. Thank you.
So as we continue to move forward, as I shared, we got to continue to monitor the development of the New York State budget. Some of us will be sitting with Senator Pam Helming tomorrow. They've released their budget, so it'd be great to hear a little bit of insight from her on her opinions and whether or not there's going to be any credibility or if it's going to come to fruition. Again, we're going to continue to keep looking for efficiencies in the budget, figure out where we can reduce the deficit to include these positions to help support our students. And we will be back on March 28th to give you an update from what we've found since today. Any questions on that part of the budget before our next steps? So on Tuesday, March 28th, we'll give you an update on the personnel. On Thursday, April 11th, we will review the final budget, and if for some miracle that New York State passes their budget and we have additional funds, we will give you an update in that presentation of how we would like to spend those funds. On Tuesday, May 7th is our budget hearing and Meet the Candidates Night, sponsored by PTSA and PI. And Tuesday, May 14th, voter registration in district office. And Tuesday, May 21st is our budget vote and Board of Education election right here in the boardroom. Thank you.
All right.